All right. We're going holding by Pirke Avos, ethics for our fathers. Again, we're going holding by Pirke Avos, ethics for our fathers. We are in chapter 2. We are in Mishna 16. It's part 38, probably part 39, part 40, etc. Again, we're going holding by Pirke Avos, ethics for our fathers. We are in chapter 2, Mishnah 16, and we're speaking the last number of weeks. Last week we had off because of the fast of the ninth of Av, but we're speaking about an evil eye because Rabbi Yeshua says an evil eye, evil inclination, hatred of other people, remove a person from this world. So an evil eye, we've spoken about the idea of jealousy, causing someone to be jealous, even if you didn't necessarily do it on purpose. It could be your file gets opened up. The only time you want your file opened up by God is on Rosh Hashanah. You don't want your file opened up certainly any other time. And we've been speaking about this Rabbeinu Yonah, and Rabbeinu Yonah says, person not happy with what they have, they feel their friend is wealthier, have, let's say, a better spouse, better kids, jealous, right? And this causes damage to themselves, to their friends, and essentially, it's a lack of emunah, it's a lack of faith and belief in God, essentially. And it destroys them. Why? Because it's always inside them. They say, why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? This isn't fair. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. In general, so we've spoken, about these ideas in in a number of ways, some actually similar than others. But one thing I wanted to mention, and again, we sort of touched on this also, but I wanna bring it up also because person, always thinks in general, what they have, is the hardest. It's each trial and tribulation is made for the person themselves, right? Not for anyone else. So whatever our potential is, which we don't know, nobody knows ultimately what their potential is and what they're doing here in this world. Regardless, no one can help me reach my potential. I can't help anyone reach their potential. Meaning, each thing that we need to do or fix, right, in this world is specifically for us to do, not anyone else. No one, so what I meant by not helping is nobody can fulfill another person's obligation, whatever their purpose is in the world. I can't fulfill someone else's purpose. They can't fulfill my purpose, whatever it may be. So the other day, you speak to people, you hear what's going on in their lives, and as we always say, sometimes obviously, you think things more in general, what's going on. Sometimes you have no idea. As we said before, person could seemingly have like the best of everything, and really behind closed doors, it's an absolute, disaster. Maybe, they're suffering from health issues, maybe mental health issues, maybe, maybe other things. But the bottom line is whatever somebody else has, when you hear about it, you say, wow, you say that you're glad you don't have it. Yeah. So you speak to somebody, and let's say in this case, they have, they have a number of children at home not married, right? So in Orthodox circles, not being married, like, in the early 20s is like, it's a crisis. We don't want, kids to get married older, right? In general. But, if someone has, let's say, a number of kids home, not married, that's, and they seemingly no perspectives of getting married, even though it might be a great family, might have great parnasa, might have great livelihoods, might have other good things going for them, but they can't, let's say there are no health issues, nothing else, but they can't get the kids married. So, that would be, for them, that's a major, catastrophe. And then this person hears from someone else the hardship they're going through. Yeah, financial hardship, let's say, or medical hardship, or both, whatever. And the other person's like, well, I'm glad I don't have that. I'm glad I have what I have. And the other person says, yeah, I'm also glad I have what I have. And I'm glad I don't have what they have. So now everything's in perspective. Yeah, when we see what other people have, right? And again, what's the idea of an evil eye? The idea of an evil eye is 100% is jealousy. You feel you deserve X, and God's not giving it to you. Again, it doesn't matter really what it is. But a person feels they're missing something, so to speak. This is something they deserve, and they should have it. Why should X person have it? Why should, or not even X person, why don't they have it, right? Simple. Why do they themselves, why don't they have it? Why are they lacking over here? Well, when you look at their life, and you hear what's going on in their life in general, obviously you don't know necessarily all the details. Again, it depends. Depends how close you are, let's say with this family. But think about it. You hear what's going on in their lives. And when you hear what's going on in their lives, what's the first thing a person's going to say? First thing a person's going to say is, thank God I don't have that. Whatever it is, they may have other things going on in their lives that are better than you. Yeah, they got a nicer house. Yeah, they have more money. They have, I don't know, whatever it is that they have that's better than you, let's say, or more than you, let's say better. Yeah, but you look at other aspects and you have more than them, right? Let's say, person's got, a number of children, married off. They're happy in the marriages, get along with the other side, which is a big benefit. It's not a given, certainly not a given that both sides, both families will get along and that the families will mesh. It's a bonus. 100% a bonus, but it's certainly not a given. But you'll say, well, what we have. You have a number of kids married off, everything's good. Between them again. I'm not saying everything's perfect, but seem to be happy, kids are doing good. So you look at the other person, but you have other issues. Maybe they're health issues, maybe they're financial issues, maybe family issues, maybe everything in between. Maybe you have every last thing in between, but you don't have what this person has. You don't have, 3, 4 kids, at home or not at home, and they're not married, right? Or there are other issues, whatever it is. Whatever a person has, they are thankful that what someone else has, you don't have. In other words, if you saw like all these people and everyone had like a plastic bag and they put in their plastic bag all their woes and all their trials, right? And they throw it in the middle. But everybody else sees what you have and what other people have. And you see what they have, right? Everyone sees whatever they have, whatever everyone else has. Now, if they're given time, they say, okay, someone will tell them, go pick up the package, go pick up the plastic bag that you want. Yeah. Now, which bag are they going to pick up? Most likely, they are going to pick up the bag that's theirs. They are not going to pick up what someone else has. Why not? Because when they look in the bigger scheme of things and they see what other people go through and what they themselves go through, what are they going to say? They're going to say, well, thank God I don't have that. Yeah. This person has money, but guess what? Their health is shot. Yeah, they're not going to get better. Right? They wake up every day in pain. Yeah. Well, let's say, like, that's their main thing. It's like, okay, don't want that. Right? You go to the next person. They don't have livelihood issues. But they have issues with their kids and with their family, and it's like, it's very bad. Like, okay, I don't want that. Right? They go to the next person. Same thing. Right? Whatever it is that somebody else has, you look at your own life and you say, well, I don't have that. And again, even if they have more than you can have all these cases. All these cases, people throw their problems into this bag. And let's say there are 10 people, you included. 9 out of the 10 do not have financial issues. Yeah? Let's say one person does have financial issues. So the one that has financial issues, you're going to look very carefully at what everyone else has. So they might not have financial issues, but they got health issues. Or they got mental health issues. Or they have family issues. Or I could list, a whole laundry list of things that other people have that you don't have. And let's say even if you share some of them, okay. Most likely, which bag is the person going to pick? They are going to pick their own mess. They're going to pick their own bag. Oh, their own bag. Why? Someone else has it easier. Right? Let's say you're struggling financially. You see all these people have it easy. I'll pick one of them. At least I'm not struggling financially. Okay. Would you rather have chronic back pain? Would you rather not be able to walk? Would you rather have mental health issues? Would you rather have, I don't know, issues with your kids, with a spouse, with family, with, I don't know, you fill in the blank, whatever that problem is. So most likely a person is never going to pick up someone else's problem. Why are they not going to pick them up? Because they don't want them. Right? They're happy with their own problems. So when they're happy with their own problems, out of all the ones they have to pick, they're going to pick their own. And everyone's going to pick their own. Right? One person's going to say, well, I don't have financial issues. Well, but if I would take this person's bag, I have family issues. I don't have family issues. Yeah, I don't want to struggle with family issues or health issues or other things. So even if they don't have certain things that other people do, they're going to be happy with what they have. Everyone's going to be happy with what they have. Now, what's the problem? What's the problem? We're looking at external things, which don't matter. Because at the end of the, some do, but most, I would say, don't. Now, why do I say they don't? Why should I say they don't matter? Because at the end of the day, what do they have? What is the focus on? Right? So comes along Rabbeinu Yonah over here, and he's saying that you have a lack of focus. Or let's say better, your focus is bad. Your focus is on something that you fantasize will be better. Yeah? Or maybe it will be better. Let's say they see someone building an extension, on their house or on their apartment. Now they can't. For whatever reason. Either they don't have money, they can't build, whatever it is. But let's say they need the space. Now let's say they were given a crystal ball. They're given a crystal ball and say, okay, if you had the money, let's say, if you had the money, this is how long it's going to take. This is the aggravation you're going to have. Yeah, but at the end, this is the end result of what you're going to get. Now, some people would say, I'll take it. It's worth it. I'll do it. Other people take a step back and think about it. Because they're not thinking about the whole picture. They're thinking, this person has this, I want this. Right? And we mentioned before, wanting what someone else has, right? What's one of the 10 commandments? One of the 10 commandments is lo sachmon. Lo sachmon means not to desire what someone else has. Now, even if you don't act on it, even if you don't try and get it or acquire it or whatever, just by wanting what someone else has that you don't have, you come across a Torah prohibition. Yeah, you come across a Torah prohibition. Now, where does that not apply? That wouldn't apply in Ruchnius, in spirituality, right? Let's say you go to someone's synagogue, yeah? You go there and you say, oh, I could do this. I could have so many congregants. I could have more congregants. Yeah? What does that do? You say, oh, the person's jealous. Yeah? That's for a good thing. Why is that for a good thing? Because they're not out to badger the other person, speak badly against them, speak less and hard. What's their goal? Going to motivate themselves. They want to build something. They want to do something spiritual terms. That motivates them. Right? Again, we're not talking about where it goes south and the person's, oh, well, this rabbi did this, he did that, he said the other thing. What's bad mouthing someone? I mean, that's easy to do. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a person that says, I wish I had that. I desire to have that. Now, that's not a bad desire. In physical terms, if a person sees someone that has something that you want, that's a different issue. In spiritual terms, it can motivate you to be better, to learn more, to, I don't know, strive to do more good, to help others, whatever it is. In physical terms, it's worse. Why in physical terms? Because again, if a person has 100, he wants 200. If he has 200, he wants 400, right? Money never ends. And no matter how much a person has, they want more in general. So you have to know how to use it. It's not, not a simple thing over here. Because even if you have it, first of all, it doesn't mean you're going to keep it. Person could, invest it in the wrong thing. Business could go south for a while. I mean, a lot of things potentially could happen. It's not a given that no matter how much money you have, you're going to keep it. A famous rich person once said that, I have so much money, I'll never die with my money. Right? I'll never die with my money. So we have a general rule. The Gemara says, Al tiftach peh l'satan. You never open up your mouth to Mr. S. Right? Because then Mr. S says, oh, really? Now we're going to test him. Or not even that. Mr. S goes to God and says, look at this guy. Look at the hubris. Look at the conceitedness of this guy. He thinks he's God himself. God judged him and says, you're right. He deserves to die. So you're gonna take his life. But how are you gonna take his life? How are you gonna take his life? Everything, even if we don't see it and we don't understand it, is measure for measure. Yeah? So this idiot says, I get so much money, I'll never die with my money. So what happened to this guy? True story. What happened with this guy? Goes into his vaults, goes in the bank, goes in the special vaults, Friday afternoon. No one thinks he's in there. They lock the vault. No cell phone reception, no nothing. They don't open up the bank till Monday. Now, what's going to happen over here? He's going to die. You know why he's going to die? Because he can't eat it. He can't eat the money. Yeah? Yeah? He's got nothing to drink. So he dies. This guy dies by his own motto. Right? And what's his motto? This guy's got an ego, bigger than the entire universe. Because that's what money does. All right, money can absolutely corrupt a person, think they're God themselves, think they have so much power. So what does he say? That'll never happen. I'm never going to die with my money. God says, really? He didn't have any merit to live? God says, I'm going to take you, but I'm going to take you in a specific way. Yeah, I'm going to take you measure for measure. You say I'll never die with my money. And guess what? He died with his money. With all his money, millions, billions, whatever it is. Stocks, bonds, jewelry. Can't eat it. Can't eat any of it. So what's the money worth? Imagine, he knows. He knows time's running out. He's going to get delirious, he's going to die of starvation. Then that's how they found him. That's exactly how they found him, dead. Yeah, you can only live a certain amount of days, without water. Food you can live, for a number of days. Water you won't be able to live. Yeah, but he's surrounded by all these things. And all these things don't do diddly for him. Can't help him. Yeah, I open up his big mouth. I'll never die with my money. Really? God says you might want to take that back. You don't want to take that back? Okay. So you'll die with your money. That's how you're going to die. Yeah, measure for measure. Now, we don't always see the measure for measure. How people get punished and what they go through and this and that. Okay, doesn't matter. Right? That doesn't matter. This is God's world. All right? God runs the world. He's the one in charge. So he'll deal measure for measure. And then after 20 years, he'll show us, after we die, what exactly it was and why we had to go through it, and all these different things. Anyway, that's not the topic. All right, that's not the topic here. We've spoken about that a lot. Right? What's going on over here? So the bottom line is a person is going to be very happy with whatever they're going through. As hard as it may be, as impossible as it may be to go through. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Whatever the trial is, they're going to feel like they can't move, they're stuck, and They're just getting sledgehammered and all these things. Okay. But when you think about it in perspective, which is not so easy to do, right? We'll say, okay, you wrote 10 things down, 20 things down you're thankful for. But when a person gets down, you look at the list, even before you look at it, you rip it up or you burn it, right? It's very hard to go through what we go through. What everybody goes through, doesn't matter. Everybody has hardship. Good. That's from our own perspective. Now, if you look at someone else's hardship, which can be a hardship, right? Can very easily be a hardship for someone else, and you're trying to empathize, trying to help them, different things. But in the back of your mind, in the back of a person's mind, what are they thinking? In the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, I don't have this. You're thinking you feel so bad for the other person. Yeah, you feel so bad for the other person, but, at the end of the day, you don't have it. Not to say you can't get it or you can't have that issue, right? You could, maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, a person, may get that dreaded disease or something else may happen. Okay, right? But at this point in time, you don't have this issue. And again, it doesn't really matter at this point, what what that issue is going to be. Yeah. But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, a person's going to say in their own case, going to say, woe to me, and this is hard and so hard. And that's true. That 100% is true. No one denies it. Very true. Yeah. But when they see what someone else has, forget about you wrote down 10, 20 things you're thankful for. That also helps until you burn it or you rip up the list. When you understand how to see the bigger picture. Okay. Because don't we always say if you have, if one door is closed, other doors open? So that means you're stuck. So, it's going to be a new beginning. How's it going to be a new beginning? Where am I going to go? How's it going to work? You don't know. You don't know where the next step's going to come from. But at the end of the day, if a door is slammed shut, let's say when it comes to livelihood, a door gets slammed shut. Normally, we're going to say, okay, this door got slammed shut for whatever reason. Doesn't matter why, right? Doesn't matter why. Just because the door got slammed shut doesn't mean every last door is slammed shut. Meaning that if a person has the door slammed shut, there are other opportunities. He'll be granted other opportunities. They're not going to be stuck forever. He'll be granted other opportunities. Now, you may say, it looks bad now. How can it get better? Etc. Someone tells me they had a job they didn't want to take, they didn't want to do, they end up doing this job, and they got let go after, let's say, 11 months, and, other people got let go also. They weren't the only ones, okay. But what happens if you don't work for a company, for more than a year? There's no, what do you call it? Can't get unemployment. Here in Israel, you can't get unemployment. You have to work for more than a year to get unemployment. So you say, what's going to be? What's going to be next month? I can't get unemployment. What's going to be? So a person scrambling, they don't know what to do. Because the door just got slammed shut. Very good. For whatever reason, don't matter. Yeah. They, let's say the company's making, they have to lay people off. Okay. So they got laid off. Number of people got laid off. Very good. So you say, well, they got laid off in a way which was premeditated, that they don't have to pay compensation. Yeah. And not only that, the person can't get, the person's not going to be able to collect unemployment. Very good. So now what do you do? So you'll say, well, this person is now in dire straits. Yeah. So who's the only person you can turn to in such a situation? God. You got nowhere else to turn. Right? That's, when a person has difficulty in life, that's the first place. Right? That's the first place. You got to put, you're going to turn to. But you have to put your best foot forward. Very good. 100%. You got to put your best foot forward. Yeah. Nonetheless, doesn't mean that's where salvation is going to come from. Right? As we've mentioned many times. All right. So you put your best foot forward. Now, let's say putting your best foot forward you're going to be spinning your wheels. So even doing what you're doing, let's say, you're going to be spinning your wheels. So you give yourself a certain amount of time, right? According to nature. Certain amount of time. Very good. So you give yourself a certain amount of time. And in the back of your mind, you're going to have to find something else. You're going to have to find something else to compensate. Okay. Now, what happens? What happens? So, l'mal min hateva, above nature, God says, you know what, I'm going to help you out. Normally, let's say, something's involved in marketing, you get, a client here, a client there, whatever. More or less over the last 6 months, over the last year, how many clients you get, how much money you put out, how many clients you get, this and that. You say, okay. So you know that, let's say it's not so consistent, and that, you have a track record, how many people you've gotten, this, that, and the other thing. Okay. So you say, I'm still going to put my best foot forward, but I'll keep my, eyes and ears open for something else. Now, what happens? What happened in such a situation? Because someone told me the story. What happened? So that month, a few weeks later, they got a whole bunch of clients. They got a whole bunch of clients. They didn't do anything different. They put their best foot forward, not expecting very much. Like, as time has gone on, let's say in the past year or 2 years or whatever, this is what's been. This is what's been. I don't, you don't see it's going to change. But you put your best foot forward anyway. Very good. Now, all of a sudden, what happened? Everything looks, everything looks black. Yeah, you're gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna have to find something else. Okay, right? How much time do you give it? You're not gonna give it much time. Okay. Now what happens? A few weeks later, person gets person gets a whole bunch of clients. What they do different? They didn't do anything different. They did the exact same thing they're doing before. Same marketing, same strategy. Nothing changed. Nothing changed in what they were doing. But there was one thing that changed. What was the one thing that changed? God opened the doors. Now, why at that point did God open the doors? Can't answer. We don't know. Maybe they took on something. Maybe they showed a much greater deal of self-sacrifice. I don't know. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Now, this is a shocking surprise because it goes against everything they've done up until this point. In other words, person has a certain business, so they know how much is going to come in at some point. They can find more clients, and some people stop, and you have you have to find other people, like whatever it is. So what happens? What happens? You have a pattern. Seemingly, you have a pattern. A pattern. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. Very good. Yeah, but there's a pattern there. So now you didn't do anything to change the pattern, and what happened? What transpired? God all of a sudden opened up the doors. That's the only explanation. Yeah. No atheist in a foxhole. You're going to say, oh, you must have done this. Oh, you must have done. Oh, you got lucky. How did I get lucky? How did this person get lucky? The last 5 years, this is the way it's been. Yeah. Or 10 years, whatever it is. This is the way it's been in their business. Yeah. And you can prove it statistically. It's very easy to prove. So if it's been consistent that way for so long, then what exactly changed? You're going to say the market changed. No. The strategy changed. No. Something had to give over here. Okay. But you didn't do anything different. So if you didn't do anything different, the market didn't change. Nothing changed in the bigger scheme of things. I mean, you come up to one or two conclusions. One conclusion is you got lucky. And this is really above nature. Right? Forget about being above nature. Let's say you got lucky. You got lucky, you got a few clients, and that snowballed into other clients and whatever. Yeah. That's one explanation. What's the obvious other explanation? This is above nature. This does not go according to nature. Right? Doesn't make sense. This is something that nature can't explain. Now, how do I know? Where's my Nevi'us? Where's my prophecy here? Because if you do a study of what the person was doing and how much money was coming in and what the strategy was and this and that didn't change, and this has been consistent, let's say for the last 5 years, last 7 years, whatever it is, this has been consistent day in and day out. Sometimes it's better, sometimes worse, but this is consistent. What changed the consistency? It's not your marketing, right? It's not anything you did. You put your status in. You put in your best foot forward, as the Chol says, right? As it says in Duties and Heart. You put your best foot forward. Very good. So all of a sudden, you got a windfall. And that windfall is going to continue for, X amount of years. Why did that happen? You don't have a rational explanation. Again, it's either you got luck, you got very lucky, which we don't believe in, right? It's either you got just very lucky and it carried over, which according to nature never should happen. Kind of like you look at the history of the Jewish people, absolutely miraculous, right? Some people can come to Judaism just by seeing how the Jewish people survived throughout the millennium. Totally not according to nature. Yeah, there's also, again, not the same thing, but it's not according to nature. Right? Statistically, it'll prove you wrong. Every single time it'll prove you wrong. So then the question is, either you got lucky. You have to say, either you got lucky, or there's something supernatural going on. You can't explain it otherwise. Then people come up with theories. Okay. But none of those theories are going to stick. And the reason is because no matter what happens, during that time, you have been statistically, been given this amount, that amount, more or less, throughout the years. It's very easy to do the test. It's not rational. Yeah, it's totally not rational. What happened? Right? So you have to say, again, it's either luck or there's something supernatural going on. Right? But in general, when you see, as Rabbeinu Yonah over here says, when you see what goes on and you see the bigger picture, why in the world, and we've been speaking about this for weeks, why in the world do you care what someone else has? Because what they have, you don't know, other things they don't have. There are other things they're going through. Now, maybe some things you know about, and maybe some things you don't even know about. But let's say, forget about what goes on behind closed doors. Let's say it's very clear certain things are going through right now. Right? Like in this case, you have somebody who's got 3, 4 kids, they just can't marry off. Livelihood they have. A good name they have. Other things they have. They can't marry off the kids. It's a huge hardship. Huge hardship. On the other hand, they look at what someone else has. They have illness, they have livelihood issues, maybe both. And they're like, you know what? I'll take what I have. As hard as it is, see a person in their 30s in our community not married, as hard as that is to see, they'll say, I'm glad I don't have this. I'm glad I don't have the other thing. Yeah, but it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be a person has to see someone who's blind, someone who has mental health issues, someone who's mentally challenged, if they're mentally challenged, the person say, thank God I'm normal. Thank God I have a normal family, or whatever. Why is it that God has to show you this? Or you have to see these things, in order to realize what you do have. And what's the simple answer? Because we take for granted. When a person, let's say a person's healthy, do they take for granted their health? Absolutely. Yeah. All the plumbing works, we'll keep it simple, we'll keep it clean. You don't have this issue, that issue, the other issue. Aren't you like whistling Dixie? You see other people that suffer, other people have hardship. But you don't think about it. You don't think about the goodness. What do you think about? I'm going through this, or I'm going through that. Why should it take seeing somebody mentally challenged or seeing someone blind or crippled or, whatever, or have like serious health issues for a person to wake up? Yeah. Then the fact that you take it for granted. And you wake up in the morning and like you go like this with your fingers, you don't have arthritis. Or you don't have back pain. Or you don't have other things. Very good. Yeah. But you only realize what you have when you don't have it. But why should it be that way? It should be that way. 100% shouldn't be that way. But that's what we do. We'll take a lot of things for granted. Absolutely take a lot of things for granted when we don't have it. Or when it goes south. But see, sometimes we get a wake-up call. And God will show us. And say, you really think you got it bad? Let's say in this particular area, I'll show you it can be worse. I'll show you. Yeah? And you see somebody. Let's say you see somebody and they got a lot worse things than you have. A lot worse things. So you say a person, in general, use livelihood as an example. Person suffering tremendously from livelihood, yeah? They're suffering. They don't know what to do. Are they going to make it better? Are they going to pay bills? This, that, very good. Or maybe not so good. Whatever it is. When you're feeling down, what are you going to do? How's it going to work? What's the future going to be? You don't know. Right? You don't have a workable solution here. So, you're feeling down. Obviously, you got to turn to God because, you have nowhere else to turn. And then that should be the first place. But you have to put your best foot forward. Very good. So, so a person's feeling down. And it's like, why shouldn't, I should be able to do this, and why not this, and why not that? Very good. And why should I have to suffer like this? We don't know. And then God opens your eyes. And then God says, you're feeling down. Okay, it's a hard, let's say it's a hard trial, right? It's a very hard trial. Well, then when God opens your eyes and he shows you somebody can't take care of their own needs. He shows you somebody that's blind. He shows you somebody that got serious health issues. Now, is a person still going to complain about their own about their own situation right now because they don't have money? Of course they're going to complain. They're not going to take the complaint away, you might say. Like, how does this help? Yeah? Because when God opens your eyes, it makes you think a different way. It's going to say, okay, this is a hard test. You're right. God can say, I put you through a hard test. A hard test. Yeah? Put you through a very hard test. Well, let me show you some other things in the world that you have an absolute obligation to be thankful for. One of them is brain capacity. So I mean you have to, have 120 IQ. What do you think? You can make decisions. You're not stupid over here. You can make decisions. You can make bad decisions. Okay. But like your mind works. You don't have mental health issues. So sometimes what God will do is, you're feeling bad? You're feeling down? Okay, it's a hard test, granted. It's a hard test. Okay. Would you rather have this test? Would you have this test where like you can barely walk? You can't take care of your needs. You're physically inept. Would you rather have that? Now, some people say that doesn't offset. Why doesn't it offset? Why is someone not going to pick up that bag? If someone threw it out there, why wouldn't they pick up that bag? Because they don't want it. They don't want to feel like that. Yeah? They don't want to feel like they're incapacitated. They want to feel they can take care of their needs. But this is a very hard test. Very good. So we get reminders. We get reminders all the time. But you have to be able to see the reminders. Yeah. Let's say you go in the store. You go in the store somewhere and you see some guy, like, I don't know, complaining. Yeah. Guy's like, yelling his head off because, I don't know, someone didn't help him the right way or whatever. Yeah. So the guy's like yelling his head off. The person walks in, well, might be afraid what this guy might do, this and that, but let's say, guy's not going to hurt anyone, whatever. Guy just like loses it. You gotta say, what's the message? Say, okay, maybe the guy's a lunatic. Maybe. Maybe you gotta, be careful where you shop. Okay, but lunatics are everywhere. Yeah, but let's say you see such a thing. What's one lesson? One lesson is like, I would never do that. Like, you're in control. You wouldn't, you wouldn't, you yourself, let's say, will not lose control in such a situation. So isn't that like a check off for you and say, well, at least I wouldn't do that. I'm not like that. But we don't look at we don't look at opportunities like this. We'll say it won't register. Let's just say the guy's a lunatic. The guy got upset for nothing, right? Seemingly for nothing. So this guy's important. Okay. So I go into the nitty-gritty, what happened, doesn't matter. Guy lost his cool. Okay. But how do people look at him? How are people going to look at him? They may look at him like 100% a lunatic. But one thing they should say to themselves, like, oh, this poor guy. Listen, even to judge positively. They say, guy must have had a hard day. Maybe it's something going on at home. Maybe he's got health issues, maybe other things. Okay. Maybe we can find a merit, for a person to act in such a way. Maybe. But what's the person thinking themselves? Is he thinking the guy's total lunatic? Right? And he totally lost it. But are you thinking like, well, I would never do that. And let's say you would never do it. That gives the person a little bit of equilibrium to say that, what did I just see? Now, how does that affect the person? It can affect the person where a person says, okay, maybe this guy doesn't have a right to be upset. Let's say. Maybe he has a right to be upset. Yeah, does he have a right to yell and scream, make a scene? In the bigger scheme of things? No. But I'm talking whatever, I'm not talking about any creed, any color, it doesn't matter. This is what the person did. Now the question's gonna be, what's my reaction? How do I view it? How does it affect me? Now, whatever you're going through, whatever the hardship is, you see something like that, you take a step back. At that point, when you see this, or anything like it, or anything else, you're going to take a step back. Yeah, whatever you're going through right now is not going to matter. It's going to be irrelevant. Why is it going to be irrelevant? It's going to be irrelevant because it doesn't matter now. You see something that like you would never touch with a barge pole. Yeah. It's that package you would never grab, right? Or the bag. It's the bag you would never grab. So if it's the bag you would never grab, you're like, okay, what I'm going through is nothing compared to this. Yeah, it's a totally different thing. Totally different thing. So we got to look at the world and say, whatever I see, or whoever I see, first of all, don't think they got like such a great, better life than you. Even if they have like, a ton more money and this and that, they get all kinds of problems. They got family problems, they have drug issues, they have all kinds of issues. All kinds of issues. Yeah, but sometimes we see things and we forget how to view it in our own perspective. Yeah, in the proper perspective. So, back to our case about jealousy. You see someone building. Why can't I say, good for him, let him build? He's got the money, he needs the space, let him build. We're not talking about a case where, it affects you in a negative way. If it would take away sunlight or whatever, you can stop him. They're not allowed to take away sunlight, right? They're not allowed to do that or take away a view or, obviously unless you agree. But why does it matter? Why does it matter what they do? Why am I thinking, oh, I should have this, I deserve this? That's where ego or ego gets involved. Where a person thinks, I know what's best for me. And this would be best for me. And we pray things that we think would be best for us. Now, why don't we get it? Could be God's saying, I'm not going to give it to you because it's not good for you. And he's saying no for that reason. Or you can tell me, maybe he wants to pray harder. Right? Even, you see this week's Parsha says, as Chonon, Moshe Rabbeinu prays 515 different prayers to go into the land of Israel. What does God say? You're not going in. Right? Finally, God tells them to stop. But what do we see? You never give up, because first of all, prayer's never wasted. You didn't get answered today. Okay, so you try harder tomorrow. Yeah, you didn't get answered tomorrow. You continue. You don't give up. It's the easy way out. It's what the evil inclination wants. See? God didn't answer you. He's not going to answer you. So why bother praying? Obviously you want to pray what's best for you. And if God doesn't give it, maybe he thinks you don't deserve it. Or B, maybe it's not going to be good for you. So he's not going to give it to you. But in general, even, let's say praying for a sick person. It's a very good example. Let's say they get a tremendously bad report from the doctors. Doctors say that there's no hope. Doctors can say that based on their knowledge and whatever. But there's an X factor. What's the X factor? God himself. So just because the doctor gives a death sentence, that mean the person's going to die? Not necessarily. Could. Doesn't mean the person's going to die. Doesn't mean that prayer is a waste of time. Doctors, are not fallible. They're not infallible. They can certainly make mistakes. A doctor in general can only heal what we call flesh wounds, right? Monty Python fame, right? Only a flesh wound. Very good. Can a doctor heal on the inside? So they say, what do you mean? You get surgeons, experts. They can cut a person open, save their lives. Very good. Yeah, what happens when they sew them up? Yeah, what happens when they sew them up? Now, when they sew them up, they can tell you, based on the person's health, and health history, whatever, they'll say this should happen, that should happen, that the other thing should happen. Now, is that a guarantee it will? They'll say we've done everything we can. Your time to pray. Yeah? Because they can't heal that. They can say what could happen. Yeah. They say, it's a possibility it could be an infection. But, in most cases, probably not going to be the case. Okay. Or I'll give an example. Right? In that case, they can sit the person up and say, this is what should happen. But again, they're not God over here. They don't know. Person get an infection and die. That could happen. Yeah, Martha had a bad toothache, so she had a crown on a tooth that had a root canal. Right? So, nagging toothache. So she goes to the dentist. Dentist takes a look and he says, there's an infection. There could be food got in there. Somehow got infected. So he said, I'll put you on antibiotics. And the antibiotics really should take care of the problem. Really should take care of the problem. Worst case scenario, if the antibiotics don't work and you're still in pain, then most likely probably have to pull the tooth. Yeah? Most likely probably have to pull the tooth. Well, that shouldn't happen. Now, that was his prediction. Now, does he know 100%, that the antibiotics are going to take care of it? Let's say he knows 80%. Right? And he says this is what should happen. But he's giving you the other scenario. What's the other scenario if it doesn't work? If after 5-6 days it doesn't work, what's going to happen? Then you probably have to pull the tooth. Then you probably don't have a choice. Okay, that was what happened. Yeah, starts taking the antibiotics. Pain went away. Right? What he said. He said, this is what should happen. But again, is that a guarantee? Not a guarantee. It could have been, pain still there and pull the tooth. That could have happened. Very good, it didn't happen. Yeah, again, make guarantees. When the surgeon does surgery, very good. He stitches the person up, he can't say anything. He can say, I've done everything I can. That's what he can say. So that's why we say a doctor only has the ability to heal a flesh wound. Because on the inside, he doesn't know. Can't say for sure. He can estimate, again, based on the person's health history and other things and what should happen. He could be right. Not going to say not. I'm going to throw all doctors under the bus. Not today. Yeah, he could be right. But you know what? He's got to give all the possibilities, otherwise he gets sued. Yeah, so he has to give all the possibilities what could happen. He said this is most likely will happen. Okay. This is most likely what's going to happen. Now, if he's right, very good. Is there a guarantee? No. Not a guarantee. There's an age-old expression. The age-old expression is surgery was successful, the patient died. I know someone I worked with many years had to have a lung transplant. Yeah, and the surgery was successful. The problem is it got infected. Now it's got no immune system and infected lung. Guess what happened? He died. Right, that's how he died. Now again, surgery was successful. But then an infection happened. An infection killed him. I mean, obviously God took him, but that's what happened. So no guarantee. There's no guarantee over here. The only guarantee we say is death and taxes, right? Not necessarily in that order, but okay. People put doctor on a very high pedestal. And okay, a person's sick, you go to a doctor, very good. But again, and what level of expertise do they have here? Even if they open up a person, they save their life, let's say. They save their lives. Okay. So God used them to help save the person's life. Very good. But if once they stitch up the person, what can the doctor say? Can't say anything. He can only say, essentially, we did everything we could. That's all he can say. Can't say more than that. Now he can say, I think this will happen, I think that'll happen. Very good. Yeah, his guarantee's going to be right? No. And he's got no control. Just like a person can't control a bowel movement. He can't control it. He can't say that's what it's going to be. And 100% it's going to be. It could be wrong. 100% it could be right. Okay. It's not a guarantee. Certainly not a guarantee. So, we look at life. Life is very fragile. Right? Everybody knows that. Not saying, anything new. Anything can happen. Anything can happen, at any given time. Anything can happen. Guarantees in life, as we said before, guarantees in life are death and taxes. King Solomon says, you don't know what today's going to bring. Says in Proverbs, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Right? So you have to repent the day before you die. We've spoken about that before. How does the person know when they're going to die? Does anybody know when they're going to die? No. So what do? You have to repent every day. That's what you have to do. You have no choice. Right? You absolutely have no choice. Right? And the reason is because life takes us down different paths. We don't know. We don't know what's going to be. We definitely don't know. We definitely don't know what's going to be. Day in and day out. So isn't it true? We should, take self-accounting every day before we go to sleep. What did I accomplish? What didn't I accomplish? How did I speak to others? How did I pray? How did I do mitzvahs? Whatever I'm obligated in, very good. But isn't it easy? Get sucked into life and take things for granted, and not only take things for granted, but what we do is we're going to say, what I'm going through is the hardest thing in the world. It might be. It might be. But at the same time, how do you compare it to other things? And when you compare it to other things, what do you say? What does the person say? Thank God I don't have this. And thank God I don't have that. And they're unbelievable thankful. Why? Again, why does it have to take that to happen? Because we get caught up in our own lives. We're drowning in our own misery. So you can't see, like you're drowning in quicksand. Yeah. The only thing is you're trying to escape. You're trying to save your own life. You're trying to survive in this world. And survival in this world is hard. Says the Ramchal in Derech Hashem, to live in this world, you got to struggle. And you got to toil for any number of reasons. Whether you did it to yourself, your soul has to go through it. But you have to reach a minimal level to toil in this world in order to have a portion of the world to come. The soul has to be in this world. Very good. It's going to be very hard. Day in and day out, it can be a tremendous struggle. Yeah, because of the sin of Adam and Eve. So livelihood doesn't come easy. Not supposed to come easy. Right? You're gonna eat by the sweat of your brow. You gotta work. Some people have it easier, some people don't. Doesn't matter. You gotta work. That's what you gotta do. But it shouldn't be a person has to look, and fantasize what someone else has that you don't have. Shouldn't come to that. The person's got to realize what they have. Okay, this is what God gave them. You're working hard, in many ways to fix things, whatever. Okay. That's all one big test. That's what it is. You look at the story of Job, right? You got the adversary, i.e. the Sultan, Mr. S, whatever you want to call him, right? The angel of death, the angel of evil inclination, right? He tests Job. Very good. Takes away everything. Right? And his guess is Job's going to blaspheme. God says, no. My trusted servant is not going to blaspheme. Not going to say anything bad about me. Even a person has, upheavals and different things. So I've heard many, many times, many different people, when it comes down to the same thing. And that is, I don't deserve this. It's not fair. I'm saying every single person said it. Most people say it. That's not fair. And I changed my life and I'm working so hard. And I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Well, don't you think if you want to be close to God, there's payback? Don't you think you want to be close to the King of Kings? You get burnt. You get burnt. This is not fair. I see other people have it easy. It's an age-old question. Why the right to suffer? It's an age-old question. But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, isn't it better to live with achrayus, the responsibility? That's what it is. That every second of every day, I could either uplift my soul or downgrade my soul. I can influence others or not. Yeah. You live with responsibility. You live by what you say. You live by what you do. 100%. That's what it is. You live by both. You got to be thankful what you have, and sometimes it's hard. I get it. It can be very hard. People can suffer tremendously. I understand. But it shouldn't take to see what someone else goes through for you to be thankful. That's the point. Shouldn't be thankful. Yeah? Why not? Why should I be thankful every second of every day what you have? And what's the answer? What's the obvious answer? The obvious answer is because you get beaten down in life. That's the answer. You don't see beyond that. You only see in your own puny eyes, in your own world. You see that. Because see, but it's so hard. You're right. I didn't say it was easy. I never said it was easy. But the focus is wrong. We're too much wallowing in self-pity to realize what we do have. Right? And some people think God made it so hard, I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to do this. Right? They're going to be rebellious. Okay. God's like, go ahead. Don't pray. I don't need your prayers anyway. I don't need your blessings anyway. I'm infinite. I have no needs. I'm absolute. I need your prayers? What do I need your prayer for? I don't need your prayers. The point I allow you to pray and I allow you to draw close is for you, it's not for me. What are we ever going to say? We're going to say, God, thank you for those beautiful rings in Saturn. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank you about Pluto making that frozen tundra. Even though Pluto got the motor of the planet. Thank you very much. Jupiter, what are you going to say? What in the world are you going to say? God's going to say, thank you very much. He doesn't need it. 100% he doesn't need it. But he gives you the ability to draw close. That's what he does. Now, doesn't drawing close come at a price? Yeah. But what would you rather have? What would you rather have? Fantasy? Or that everything I do matters? And what I say matters? And the repercussions matter? Then it's all up to me. Right? The Rambam says, you look at every city, every town, every country, right? There's a scale. Person does the good thing, scale goes one way. Person does the wrong thing, scale goes the other way. So yeah, but what about all the other people? Forget about all the other people. We can try and influence, as much as we can, but we have an obligation to look out for ourselves. Since we have an obligation to look out for ourselves, in general, my action right now, as Rambam says, my action right now matters. Because whatever I do, positive or negative, could tilt the scale one way or the other. It's $1 million question. So why don't we live our lives like that? If that's true, then we should be careful every second of every day. What we do, how we interact with others, what we see, what we watch, what we listen to. A person says, hey, I can't be so insular. What do you expect me to live in a cave? No. But you have to know how to live life. That you have to do. Yeah, how am I supposed to live? What am I supposed to do? Okay. Takes time to learn. Changes the way we think, and it changes the way we look at ourselves and the way we look at the world. That doesn't mean we don't go through hardship. And that doesn't mean we don't suffer. That's not what it means. It means, how do I view it? Am I thankful what I have and what someone else, and that I don't have what someone else has? Or even if I don't look at it that way, am I thankful for what I have? Some people would say, life can be so hard and so hard. You know what? I'm not thankful for anything. Obviously, the reason they'll say they're not thankful for anything is because what they're going under, what they're dealing with is very hard. True. It may be very hard. The only reason they're going to say that is because they're getting beaten down in life. That's the only reason. If they weren't getting so beaten down in life, they'd see the good. But many have said, I can't see the good when this is going on. But there are plenty of things, to be thankful for. Yeah, plenty. You don't have so much money. You're starving, you're living on the street? No. Right? Let's say. So you have a house, doesn't belong to you, paying rent. Okay. But you're not on the street. Some places are better, some places worse. Okay, I get it. We're not asking how much worse can it be. You never open your mouth to the Sultan, right? But you're not saying it can't be any worse. Well, it could be. God can do anything, can make it a lot worse. Okay, we're not asking for that. We're not asking for that. But some people will say every last thing is bad. Now, it can't be. It's a total lie. A person has no strength. They're starving. They can barely walk. They look like, God forbid, this picture they put of this, Israeli captive that starving him to death, whatever. Like that. God forbid. But people don't take these things into perspective. They're only looking at the hardship they're going through, which I get. Makes perfect sense. But this is one of the things we got to try and overcome and see the bigger picture. Because if you don't see the bigger picture, what is this? What's Rabbeinu Yonah here talking about? He's talking about you looking for other things. When you look for other things, what happens? You're saying God's not doing his job. It's a lack of emunah. You're saying I deserve it, so why didn't God give it to you? Now, the famous question Tornus Rufus asks, Rebbe Kiva, if your God is so great, why do you have poor people? Can't God sustain everybody? So the answer is yes. So what did Rebbe Kiva say? God can't sustain everyone. So why does he make poor people? So people of money can give them charity and have a portion of the world to come. It's not the only reason. But he says it gives rich people an opportunity to have a portion of the world to come, to help others. If there's nobody in need, then they're not going to help others. Not going to help others, then what's the point of their money? Yeah? Well, that's the point. I mean, everyone, whatever they can do. But if they're given, ample means, they should be helping others. For sure, they should be helping others. But we have this mentality we live in a cream puff generation, but we can't get out of our own way. We're just thinking this is bad, that's bad, and again, we mentioned before, if a door is closed, that doesn't mean other doors don't open. Now, you might say, well, I was in a certain situation, it took 6 months for another door to open, or it took longer, or this happened, or that. Okay. It doesn't mean a door won't open somewhere. And it could be where you least expected, which is probably most likely the case. But it should never come to the point where a person, has to say, that, every last thing in their life is bad, nothing's ever been good, and there is no good. It's always good. Right? It's always good. As Chofetz Chaim says, nothing bad ever comes out of heaven. We may look at it as bad. It may be hard to see the good, but it's not bad. God, after 120 years, God's going to show us why it really wasn't bad. But we're in a physical body. We live in the physical world. It's very hard to see that. Very hard to see that in many ways. Although we believe God's ways are just, yes. Do we believe he's always right? Yes. Does that mean everything goes the way we planned? Certainly not. And see, people suffer, people go through all kinds of things. Okay. But again, the whole point is, why in the world am I looking at someone else? I mean, it's very easy to, right? And the reason is because it takes a lot away from me. It takes a lot from what's going on, in your own life. And you're looking at what someone else is doing. Who cares what they're doing? Why can't you say it's a great thing they're building? Why can't you say it's a good thing they have this or they have that? Because you yourself are lacking. For whatever reason. Right? And then a person's going to make the claim, which people inevitably do, and that is, this isn't right. This isn't what I should be going through. This should not be happening. Well, maybe there's a way to change it. That doesn't mean just sit back and say, well, God's got to do everything and that's it. No, you got to put your best foot forward. You got to figure out, how can I change it? How can I change my own situation? Whatever it is. How can I make it better? So you got to work hard. Try and do that. Now, is that a guarantee? Is putting your best foot forward a guarantee? Not a guarantee. The salvation, we say, Yeshua's Hashem Karavain. Salvation come at the blink of an eyelash. But even if it comes at the blink of an eyelash, you don't know where it's going to come from. And most likely, it'll come from a source you never thought. That's usually what happens. But you got to remember, the tests are to make us better. Kind of like a purging process in a certain way. The person says, woe to me, That's not atonement over here, right? As the Mabit says in Beis Elokim. You have to acknowledge where it comes from. If you acknowledge, yeah, God is making me suffer because of sin, that can gain you atonement for that. If a person says, woe to me, I'm suffering, yeah, and they die, they don't get the atonement for that. Suffering is tremendous atonement. Nobody wants it. Nobody's signing up for it, but it's tremendous atonement. In many ways. But you have to acknowledge, like in all things, you have to acknowledge where it comes from. And you got to be able to see that it's not a question, it's not a question of what I think. All right, nobody cares what I think. No one cares what my Rebbe thinks. We care what God thinks. Right? We care what God thinks over here. That means I got to change my mentality. I got to change the way I think, the way God wants me to think. Even if it's hard, even if I'm getting beaten down in life. Because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as I don't deserve this. There's no such thing as it's not fair. It may look unfair. Okay. What we see, we don't understand. I'm convinced, again, my own personal opinion, you can take it with a grain of salt, but I'm very much convinced if God would open our eyes for one split second, if God would open our eyes and show us why things are going on, even one aspect of our lives, or whatever it is, and he opened our eyes, I think people would drop dead. I don't think people would be able to withstand it. Now, some people would say, I'd love to know why I have to go through this. And I get this all the time. People say, I wish I had the knowledge. I want the knowledge of if it's measure for measure, what the measure for measure is. I get it. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't get it. He asked God to see him face to face. What did God say? Book of Exodus, no one can see my face and live. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? So 3,500 years later, you want to say you're on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu? That you deserve, and God says no, you can only see me from the back? Kind of chutzpah question to ask. I understand why people would ask it. Yeah. But I'm not convinced, and again, people can disagree, but I'm not convinced if God would open our eyes and say, this is why you had to go through this, and this is why you had to go through that. I'm not convinced the person's going to say, well, I'm glad I know that now. Because I think if God would show you and how much our actions matter and what the repercussions are, even though you didn't think was so bad, and the repercussion it caused, God, slammed you for it, am I going to say that was something minor? There was something that I didn't even have control over, let's say. And this is a repercussion. Why should it be so bad? It'll go out of their minds. They're not going to see it. It's going to be very hard for them to see it or to hear it. Again, imagine God, showed you, okay, 2 years ago you did this. This is a repercussion. This is how, this is how it played out. And I punished you later because of, because of the results of this. You think you punished me for that? Okay, maybe you didn't do the best thing, the right, whatever. But really, to get punished like that and all these repercussions just for that? Ooh, if God cares what you think. God cares what you do. I'll give one example. There's a famous story with the Vilna Gaon's wife, or Elijah Vilna more than 300 years ago. His wife had a friend, and they both made a pact that whoever dies first, they should come down, they come in a dream and tell them what's going on in heaven. I don't know how you can make such an agreement, but okay. They made such an agreement. Now, what's the story? The friend of the Vilna Gaon's wife, she died first. So she came to the Vilna Gaon's wife sometime later, and she said, I want you to know how specific judgment is in heaven. So he said, remember we were walking one day in the street, we saw this poor person, across the street, we motioned the poor person to come, we had charity to give him. He said, we're taking a task for that. Why? Because if we would have gone to the person and given him the money, every step would have been a mitzvah. The fact that the person had to come to us, even though we gave the money, there was a time, there was a claim. There was a claim, you didn't do it the right way. You should have gone to the other person. In every step you would have done Walk any other person would have given you unbelievable merit. Unbelievable merit, but you didn't. So you held the task for them. She woke up from this dream. She told her husband, the Vilna Gaon, and the Vilna Gaon wrote this story in the annals and the chronicles of the Beis and the Chevra Kadisha, and the burial society in Vilna. This comes along with Cheskel Abramsky, bless his memory. He was the head of the Beis Din in London many years ago. He was Torah Giant. Torah Giant's the last generation, according to everybody. Spent his last years in Israel, living in Israel. He went to Vilna. He went to visit the gravesite of the Vilna Gaon, and he checked it out and verified the story. He saw it with his own eyes. Shach, blessed memory, same thing. He was at the Panovich Yeshiva many years ago. Right, one of the Torah Giants, the last generation, according to everybody. He verified the story. Both Torah Giants verified the story. They saw it. They read it. So now you're going to ask a question on the story, like, didn't they give charity to this guy? Didn't they have good intention to give charity? Sure. But they were taking a task because they could have done it in a better way. And exponentially they could have got reward doing it the other way. So this friend of the Vilna Gaon's wife says, look at how heaven looks at things. Look at the actions and how they're scrutinized. Again, that could even give you a tremendous amount, of strength, or a person could say, well, we're going to be in serious trouble here. Yeah, because if heaven's going to take into account something like that, for the sake of a mitzvah, that they could have done in a better way, yeah, what's it going to say about what we do in this puny generation, right? In this, what I would say, this cream puff generation. So you're going to say, well, guess what? In heaven, things are different. Yeah. Things get judged in a much more severe way. True? So does that mean we got to be careful? Got to be careful with everything we do. So you'll tell me, so that either is going to give someone tremendous strength and say, look, my actions matter. I got to really think about what I do on a regular basis. And I got to be, so careful. On the other hand, a person can say, we're scrutinizing every little thing. How's it going to be possible to survive that? Yeah. How's it going to be possible? Because a person could easily say, come on, how can a person live to that standard? That just means, A, we have a long way to go. B, there's tremendous levels we can reach. Right? There are tremendous levels that a person can reach. And that person should never say, my actions don't matter. Because their actions do matter. You see by Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree, chomp, 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 whatever it was they ate, from the tree of knowledge, brought that to the world. God didn't want that. He gave him free choice. God went to plan B without going into the whole story. Yeah. Actions matter. Working on character traits matters. Anger gets out of control. For whatever reason, leads Cain to kill Abel. They had a whole discussion. The question is what the whole discussion was about. Doesn't really matter. And he got angry and he killed him. And God tries to get him to repent. Don't we have to work on character traits? Yeah. Then we get aggravated. Don't people aggravate us? Or they could aggravate us? Sure. But that, that's a lack in us. If everything comes from God, and God sent this person to get to me, so why am I on to the person? I gotta be better. God's sending me a message. That's the stick. Yeah, very good. Do we look at it that way? Again, the person causes us damage. They cause us damage. Are they guilty? They're guilty. let's say they're guilty. Very good. So if they're guilty, isn't God going to take care of them? Yes. Absolutely, he's going to take care of them. If God's going to take care of them, what am I worried about? So you're going to say that's a natural reaction. Natural reaction is you go after the person. Very good. God will take care of them. If they cause you damage, you go after them. Good. But you got to remember, you take a step back, why did that happen? Because obviously it must have been something I did or a person did, and God used that person to get to you. But again, is the person guilty? Sure. Do I have to forgive the person? Not necessarily. Depends what they did, but it's going to be very hard if they cause you damage. Okay, that's a whole nother topic. We're not going to get into. But, the Chol Bible says the gate of Bitachon, and the gate of faith and belief in God. What does he say? Someone caused you damage, go up and hug them and thank them. Gave you an opportunity to work on, character development. Anyone sign up for that? What we do is always, I shouldn't say always, a lot of times it's a knee-jerk reaction. We react. The person's going to say, this person caused me damage, God should deal with them. Well, God is going to damage them. He's going to deal with them, sorry. He's going to deal with them. But when you pray for God to deal with someone else, again, we've spoken about this before, he's going to open your file first. You're going to say, not fair. This person caused me damage. God said, you're right. I used him to get to you, so why? So you're telling me I'm not doing my job. So now your file is going to be open. I'm going to open your file now. Why? You only want your file open on Rosh Hashanah. That's it. You don't want God to open your file any other time. But now what did you do? You're blaming this guy causing you damage. God says, you're right, causing damage. He's guilty. I'll deal with him. He's guilty. I'll take care of him. Not a problem. But as if to say you're not doing your job. Don't ever say God's not doing his job. Person, feels someone else wronged them, even if they did. Asking God to take revenge for them and judge them, right? You're opening your own file. You don't want your file opened unless it's on Rosh Hashanah. God's going to scrutinize that file. Say, okay, you want me to deal with this person? You're saying I'm not dealing with them. Let's see what you're holding in the world. Whether it's right or wrong, let's see what you're holding in the world. Who's going to pass that test? If you pass the test, very good. If you don't pass the test, that other person's going to get punished, that's for sure. But now he's looking at you and saying, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Because you want me to do my job. And you're saying I'm not doing my job. That's a lack of emunah. So you can tell me there are different levels and one person reaches. Okay. But this is what you're supposed to do. This is the level we're supposed to reach. It's not for the righteous. He's not telling you, the only righteous people can do it. If for us little people, it doesn't affect us. Not true. Holy Bible says a number of places like that. You think it's only for the righteous. Think again. It's for everybody. You're going to say, well, we're all dead. Maybe. It means we got what to work on. That's what it means. I got to strive. I got to work hard. Life is hard in general. But think about it. If we start working step by step, we're not jumping through hoops here. We're not trying to be something we can't be. Yeah, that's a different issue. Then you take it step by step. Okay. And God's going to judge it step by step. He's not going to judge it according to future potential. He's not doing that. He's going to judge you where you're holding now. Yeah. So somebody asked, should we bring heavenly action and behavior on a daily basis for the sake of mitzvahs to fill our obligations? God cares about them. Again, it's our relationship with God. Yeah. So whatever mitzvahs we do, yeah, we want to. Our goal is to do it to the best of our ability. That's our goal. That's sometimes kind of hard, right? The person's tired, other things going on, right? It's not always so easy. But again, everything we do, we always have to work on character traits. Even good character traits we have to work on, right? Which the Ramchal says in Path of the Just. Yeah. So I thought that was a big novelty. If he's going to tell me you got to work on things you need to work on, I get it. Or I'm going to work on things that are good, that you're good at, because he wants you to perfect them. You take a professional athlete, if he's very good at one thing, or a number of things, right? So he's going to work on things that are hard for him, as well. The good things you want to make better. You don't want to just leave them and rely on, your laurels, rest on your laurels. You want to work on it and perfect it. So too, a person has good character traits. We all have good character traits, but you have to work on them. If you don't work on them, they'll atrophy, right? So you have to work on them. You have to work hard on them, as well. You also have to work on things that are hard to work on, not just the things that you're good at. That's easy. But a person will say, I don't want to practice, I don't want to review, I don't want to do this. Okay. But they're easy things to work on, to perfect. Things that are hard to fix, person want to work so hard. Person definitely doesn't want to work so hard. Why not? Because they're hard to do. Imagine, we'll mention, we'll take basketball, let's say, for example. Yeah, basketball, a good example. So let's say a person's very good, very good, dribbling with the right hand. Dribbling, crossovers, this, that, do it with your left hand. Your left hand's your weaker hand. Okay. If a person wants to be a complete player, they should have, should be able to use the left hand also. But, a person favors one hand or the other, right? One side or the other. For sure they favor. But imagine if they can go both ways. Imagine if they can do things that are even hard for them, or they can perfect, or they can work on trying to make better. Any professional athlete, that's huge. Because then it's another thing in their repertoire that, they can have an advantage over someone else. But if something's hard, people don't want to work on it. I say it's too hard. They only want to work on the easy things. Well, guess what? There are things that are hard to work on. Yeah, but you have to try. Even in a small level. That's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. And we have to try and be the best we can, no matter what happens. Yeah, but again, make no mistake. Make no mistake. A person cannot say, it's impossible to say they don't have any good in life. Nothing. Right? That's impossible to say. Even if a person had a really hard life. Right? So you have to be able to see the bigger picture. You have to be able to see what you have. But you don't want to be able to see, I guess this is the point. You don't want to be able to see what you have when you don't have it. Because then you never took advantage of what you did have. Then you're always saying this is bad, that's bad, and the other thing's bad. Right? But you didn't realize how good you had it until you didn't have it. Right? It should never come to that point. Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes God has to show you. And then when you're feeling down and you're feeling out, then all of a sudden you come across someone who's mentally challenged, or someone who's handicapped, or somebody's blind, or whatever it is. You should look up to heaven, you see that, and nod and say, thank you very much. I'm glad I don't have that. Be thankful for what you have. But it shouldn't be to the extent where you're only thankful because you didn't have it. God took it away, let's say. Yeah, let me see. Any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to sign out. I do this every Saturday, 2:30 Eastern Time, 9:30 Israel Time. Anyone has any questions, I'm on Facebook at Chaim Coffin, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, Ethics for Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus, which I'm giving tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, depending where you are. And